Hi everyone! 1 year ago, I made a video predicting what fashion trends I thought were coming in 2025. And today, we are going to review all of those predictions and find out if I was right. This can be a little difficult and subjective to judge, but I'm going to try to refer to my own observations in fashion this year, online and in daily life. We'll also refer to fashion publications and news, maybe runways, and we will also be referencing Google Trends data about the search volume for my various predictions over time. Obviously, all of these measures of trendiness have limits, but I hope together they can give us a picture of what was truly trending in 2025 to see if I was accurate or not at all. I divided my predictions into a few different overarching categories. So let's let Liz from that video a year ago introduce the first one. I think the biggest newer trend that will take over 2025 is boho. I really think this aesthetic will become like the strongest new trend in the mainstream. You know, this was a big swing. Bold of me to get specific enough to say not just that I thought this would be trending, but that I specifically thought this boho aesthetic would be the biggest trend of 2025. Do I think that was true? No. Looking at the key trends of 2025, which to me are like polka dots, funnel neck coats, butter yellow, baggy jeans and jorts, etc. We talked about a bunch of them in last week's video. None of these key items feel necessarily boho to me at all. That said, boho fashion definitely has been trending upwards this year. It was featured in fashion publications. I'm also thinking of those super trendy flowy bloomer pants. I think those definitely fall within this aesthetic category, and they were super trendy this summer. And even just checking Google Trends for terms like boho fashion, boho blouse, boho skirt, boho boots, boho accessories. Searches for boho style are up across the board. I also got into predictions for more specific items I thought would be trending within this sort of boho umbrella, so let's look at those next. Specifically, I'm picturing things like prairie dresses, lacy blouses, just lots of floaty garments, but then also styled with stuff like studs, buckles, leather, suede, fringe, maybe fur. Okay, let's break down that list. Firstly, prairie dresses. This one is a little tricky because it's kind of an ambiguous term. I don't think people were really using the term prairie dress this year. And I mean, it's up a tiny bit on Google Trends data, but like it had a higher peak in 2021 than it does now. That said, the image I had in mind here, which was like very flowy summer dresses with sleeves, did seem to be a trend this year. And we can see that searches for long flowy dress with sleeves, and summer dress with sleeves were all up. That said, in my mind, prairie dresses also tend to have little calico or floral patterns, and those did not trend at all this year. So I don't think we can quite call this a successful prediction. Next, lacy blouses. This one, I think, definitely did trend this year. Flowy lacy items in general were one of the most repeated runway trends across various publications. I feel like I've seen way more lacy blouses in stores, online, and on other people. And the Google Trends data for lacy top and lacy blouse were both up this year. Next up, floaty garments. This one, I think I really nailed. I feel like flowy clothes were everything this year. I saw them everywhere. All the fashion publications and listicles were citing them as trends, and searches for flowy clothes, flowy skirt, flowy dress, and flowy top were all up this year. A lot of them have been slowly increasing over time as well, but all of them continue to grow and be even more popular in 2025. And then I also said these things would be styled with stuff like studs, buckles, leather, suede, fringe, maybe fur. This is trickier to quantify because it's more of a styling choice than like a specific product or item or style you can search for. But I definitely feel like I saw a lot more of this year. A lot of these accent items like leather, fur, etc. were cited as runway trends in their own right, and searches for various items like bags, belts, jackets with studs, buckles, fringe, or suede were all up this year. Two pieces that haven't really been trending lately that I could see having a comeback this year are gladiator sandals and peasant blouses. Okay, gladiator sandals absolutely did not trend at all. I did not see anyone wear them that I can recall. And if anything, they are trending downwards on Google Trends. Everyone didn't see the vision that I saw, and that's okay. Honestly, I do still think this is coming in the next couple of years because I have seen it repeatedly on runways. Mark my words, gladiator sandals are coming. But that's not what this video is about. For 2025, I failed on this one. On the other hand, we have peasant blouses, and I specified not just like a fitted blouse with a puff sleeve, like a true billowy, flowy peasant blouse style. I think I nailed this one. Like I said earlier with the flowy clothes, flowy blouses have definitely been trending. Flowy blouse trended up this year, boho blouse trended up this year, and even the term round blouse, which is sort of the shape I was picturing here. It's also the sort of shape of the blouse I'm wearing right now. Funnily enough, the term peasant blouse is only trending up like a tiny bit, not really a trending term at all. And I feel like this speaks to the way that sometimes we use different language to describe the same styles through different eras in time. It seems like people weren't really using the term peasant blouse to describe these tops in 2025, but the style itself was definitely up. Another billowy shape we've started to see already is, of course, the poncho and capes. I feel like those are in sort of the same category. This is interesting because I feel like it really sort of speaks to the difference between the online fashion discourse world and real life fashion trends world. Because if you had asked me before researching, I would have said this was one of the trends that I was more accurate in predicting. Ponchos and capes are something I've seen styled more and worn more online. But according to Google Trends, searches for cape and poncho are not up at all. Interestingly, cape coat and knit poncho were up in 2025. So maybe those modifiers are integral to the trend, or maybe it's not really a trend yet and it's just like a few niche fashion people online. I don't know. Overall, I think this is another one that's still baking. It's not fully cooked yet, but this is another thing I have continued to see on runways. And I do think the poncho's time and the cape's time is still coming. I've also seen mixed metals start to pop up lately. I'd say this is already kind of a trend, but I think that will get way bigger. This one, I think I was correct overall. Searches for mixed metal jewelry are distinctly up, and I definitely saw more of it myself this year, both in the styling of mixed metals together from people I follow and know in real life, and also brands putting out jewelry pieces that already have that mixed metal integrated into it. They combine silver and gold within one necklace or brooch or something. I also just want to note, in my predictions video, I went into a bunch of detail about the socio-cultural context and reasoning for these predictions, how I thought they might be a reaction to the culture. And I'm not going to recap all of that here, but I did note that I thought people have really moved away from a polished, perfect, curated aesthetic, which I think feels forced and fake and uncool to people now, and towards a worn-in, personalized, free-flowing aesthetic. Bohemian style totally fits that worn-in, natural, personal, free-spirited feel that people are really drawn to right now. And I specifically saw that influencing the beauty space as well, with things like makeup that looks more like a natural flush, hair that looks just naturally tousled and windswept. This is interesting because on the one hand, it is my impression that cosmetic procedures are currently at an all-time high, but simultaneously, I also think the idea of looking natural has very much grabbed hold of the culture. It's not that people don't want unnatural cosmetic procedures, they just don't want them to look unnatural, which is a little bleak, I gotta say. Every time I look back at my trend predictions from the previous year, they're always a little too optimistic about where the culture is gonna go. I'm always like, surely people are gonna push back on this thing, and then they never do. Anyway, this is all to say, I do think I was pretty spot on with this aesthetic prediction. Searches for natural blush and natural makeup were up this year, and so were searches for tousled hair, boho hair, and natural waves. For our final segment of the boho category, I mentioned early 2010s nostalgia, and some elements from that time coming back as well, like ditzy floral patterns, longer necklaces, thigh-high boots, and honestly, anything the Olsen twins would have worn. This was a pretty mixed bag. First, ditzy florals, which to me is like a scattered floral or calico print. As far as I can tell, did not trend at all this year. Didn't really see it anywhere. It's not coming up on Google Trends at all. This was dead wrong. I'm sure this will come back eventually. It's so classic, but I was way off on thinking it would be a thing this year. Longer necklaces were definitely trending up this year. It was all over the runway, becoming available from tons of brands. I saw it on tons of fashion influencers I follow, and longer necklace was also up this year on Google Trends. This is one I also think will just get bigger in 2026. Not to keep throwing predictions into this video, that's not what this is about, but I really think this is just the start of this shift. Thigh-high boots, I don't think are a trend yet, at least not in real life. Haven't seen anyone wearing them. And according to search volume data, if anything, these are trending downwards. However, I have seen these referenced as a runway trend this year. I also remember that they were part of the sort of Chloe Boho thing in 2024. I believe Sydney Sweeney wore some. I could also imagine that maybe these are still coming down the line later. It seems like there is some sort of trend manifesting in high fashion, but it's certainly not in the mainstream yet. Finally, the Olsen twins. I do think this style was sort of a trend this year, as we've been discussing throughout this whole section. I mean, the Row is their brand, and that's also quite popular in the luxury space. Referencing their style specifically by name did not seem to trend upward this year at all, but I do think their sort of flowy bohemian style is congruent with the larger trend. All right, those were all my predictions within the boho umbrella. But of course, that was not my only overarching category, so let's hear the next one. I also think a second overarching category will sneak in and start to rise this year, and that is 1920s fashion. Okay, this was not trending by name. Like, people weren't talking about 1920s inspired fashion this year, but that's not really what I was expecting or predicting anyway. Like I said, I thought it would more sort of sneak in subtly via various styles and garments. So let's just jump into specifics here. The one I've seen the most is a straight, relatively loose-fitting column dress, usually with a drop waist, and usually with some sort of twist or tie or draping at the hips. This one, I think I kind of nailed. I have only seen this style more throughout the year from various retailers and on runways, and searches for drop waist dress and column dress were both up this year. I also couldn't figure out a good search term for that drapey tie thing at the hips. That said, I have definitely seen this feature more throughout the year. Next, I mentioned longer necklaces here again. We already discussed that, so we can skip to the next one where I said, I'm also envisioning very sleek fitted caps or headscarves becoming bigger this year. I think I nailed this one too. I feel like I saw this all year, especially with netted crochet skull caps, which I've seen so many people wearing. And indeed, skull cap, Juliet cap, and knit bonnet were all trending up in the search data as well. Next up, another 1920s-esque trend that I see rising in 2025 is short hair for women. Low-key, I feel like this was one of my least accurate predictions in this whole video. I remember making this prediction because so many women I follow online or see in celebrity culture or know in real life all cut their hair short at the end of 2024. And I was like, this is the start of something. But then after that, literally, I don't know if I've seen a single other person do it in 2025. That's not true. I've seen a couple, but certainly not enough to constitute a trend. If anything, I think we backtracked. I feel like long hair is as popular as ever this year. If anything, it is even more popular, and there's even more of a pressure and expectation for women to have long, luscious, thick hair with all the keratin treatments and hair growth pills and stuff that are out there. This was another overly hopeful trend on my part, I think. Another 1920s trend that I think is going to come back into fashion is cocoon coats. This one is interesting because Google search volume for cocoon coats actually was slightly up this year, but I don't think this was a trend this year at all. Quince does currently have a product that they are marketing as a cocoon coat, but it's actually sort of a different silhouette than what I had in mind with this prediction. Then I did also search round coat because that's sort of the shape I had in mind with the cocoon coats, and I thought maybe they're becoming known by a different title or something. Again, the language of fashion changes with time. And that was trending up. But again, I don't feel like I have seen the coat silhouette that I had in mind this year. I don't know. Am I missing it? Have y'all seen this in 2025? Let me know. Overall, I'm going to say this one's sort of mixed. I don't really think this was quite a trend in 2025. However, this is another one that I think is still coming because those round slouchy shapes are so popular in general. And also I have seen this cocoon shaped jacket all over the runways for 2026. I've also realized after doing these trend prediction videos, this I think will be my 4th year doing one. And year after year, as time passes and I look back, I keep discovering that my predictions for the year ahead are almost always a year too early. And so many of my predictions for 2023 ended up becoming bigger trends in 2024. So that's also part of the reason that I'm now noticing this pattern, and I'm thinking some of these trends that I predicted for 2025, I think their year is yet to come. Finally, I also predicted we would see more beading, brocade, sequins, all that sort of ornate detail. I'm gonna say this was a trend. I feel like we saw a lot more textured fabrics this year in fashion in general. In fact, it was a repeated theme across many fashion trend listicles. Texture has sort of been everything in general. The people are obsessed with texture this year in fashion, including me. And searches for beaded dress and brocade dress were all up in 2025. Overall, I think this was a pretty successful prediction. That brings us to my last prediction category, which I called messy make-believe. Basically, I mean detailed, ornate, fairy tale, or theatrical inspired fashion, but less princess costume and more nomadic folk story wizard. I feel like I was basically describing the weird evil or medieval weird aesthetic here without really realizing it. I think I learned those terms a week later. And I think we definitely saw this a ton more this year. I saw it a bunch. Apparently, a lot of you saw it a bunch too because many people submitted it in my survey of trends of 2025 on Instagram. And indeed, searches for medieval core, medieval fashion, and medieval style were all way up this year. Also, even beyond the medieval thing specifically, I think this overarching vibe that I had in mind kind of hit the nail on the head for this year, especially for runways. This has been cited repeatedly as a runway trend, and I was on the right track with the vibes that might resonate, that might be calling to people this year. Now, let's get into specifics. I'm picturing ornate fabrics, lots of layering and texture, maybe even chainmail. Very layered textural outfits have definitely trended up this year. I've been seeing it everywhere from other fashion creators, fashion publications, kind of all over the place, people talking about layering and texture. And searches for layering outfits, textured clothing, and textured fashion were all way up this year. I've also definitely seen more chainmail, especially subtly in like jewelry and stuff. And searches for chainmail have steadily increased over 2025 as well. In regards to the ornate fabrics, this one is honestly a little confusing because I found that searches for jacquard fabric, beaded fabric, lace fabric, metallic fabric, and embroidered fabric were all up, but they seemed so consistent and so similar, and like the spike was in the same place for all of them, that I got suspicious. So then I just searched for cotton fabric and just fabric, and those also both spiked up at about the same place. And then I realized that spike happened shortly after Joann's went out of business and all their stores closed. So it very well could be that all the people who were buying their fabrics at Joann just were now going online and searching where to find those specific fabrics elsewhere. I don't know for sure that that's the cause, but it seems likely, or it could be something else totally unrelated and different. I just thought this was interesting and worth sharing because it really goes to show, even when it comes to data and graphs, things that seem, totally objective, there might be other factors at play that you're not taking into consideration. And a single piece of data, like the rate of people searching for jacquard fabric, isn't necessarily the whole story. And that could be true for some of the data on the other trends I'm discussing here too. Just because their Google search volume was up doesn't necessarily mean they were a mainstream fashion trend, but I'm just trying to use that as one piece of input to consider the larger, broader picture of fashion trends in 2025. Anyway, all this said, then I tried searching for dress instead of fabric, and jacquard, beaded, brocade, lace, metallic, and embroidered dress were all up in 2025. But cotton dress and simple dress were not up at all. So I do think my point stands, based on this and all the other evidence we have here, that these more textured or detailed fabrics were trending up this year in clothing. I also mentioned capes and ponchos again here. We already discussed that. So let's go to the next predictions, which were uneven hemlines, more muted or darker colors. I think uneven hemlines on dresses and skirts were definitely a trend this year. It's another one I saw repeatedly from other people and from brands and on runways, kind of everywhere. And while there doesn't really seem to be like a title, an ideal search term for this style, uneven hemline is not like the term people are using for this, that's just me using it. Searches for flowy skirt, flowy dress, and asymmetrical hem were all up this year. As for the muted, darker colors, I definitely do think colors like navy, burgundy, and brown increased in popularity this year, but I had a similar problem here as I did with the fabric search terms. I searched for navy, maroon, gray, black, and olive green clothes, and they all increased at such a similar rate at the same point in the year that I then checked like every other color of clothes, and almost all of them were up at a similar rate. So I have no idea what is causing that. Maybe just caring more specifically about the colors of your clothes, searching for clothes by color. Maybe that's become more popular this year. I have no idea. It's weird that it happened this year instead of a few years ago when the seasonal color analysis boom happened. All this said, I do have the sense that more dark, moody, muted colors were worn more this year, but I don't really have a great way to really verify this. So I'm curious what you all think on this one. Let me know. Did you also see more navy, brown, burgundy, dark purple, and a dark olivey green? Those are the colors coming to mind for me. All right, let's hear the next prediction. I just saw Cup of Jordy point out in a video that she saw an influencer who was wearing crowns for fun on Instagram. Okay, this is funny because I really didn't know if this was a trend in 2025. But then just a couple days ago, I actually saw these fabric crown kits as a product for sale from Oddly. So clearly they're having some kind of moment. I think I've seen this more in the past year on Pinterest, as well as sort of a fun little DIY craft moment, like birthday crowns, that sort of thing. And searches for casual crown and fabric crown were both up this year. Within this messy make-believe bucket, I said I could also see certain elements of theatrical costuming entering into mainstream fashion more this year, like clown/circus aesthetics and also drag aesthetics. This, I think, maybe happened in little subtle ways. I think all the billowy round clothing that we already talked about could be argued as circusy, like the reference photo I used on the screen. Vertical stripes were also big this year, which feel a bit circusy. And there also seems to be sort of a trend towards circusy aesthetics in home decor right now. This was also in the Pinterest Predicts Trend Report for 2026, which I was just referencing the other day. It does also appear that circus clothing and circus fashion were trending up this year in search volume. So it does seem like there's something going on here. There's something cooking. In regards to drag aesthetics, these don't seem to be trending at all, at least in name, being identified as drag aesthetics. Like, drag makeup is not trending upwards at all in search volume. However, I would argue that many designers have sort of borrowed from elements of drag aesthetics this year. Like, for example, all the padded hips and corsetry in so many celebrity red carpet looks, creating this sort of artificial, exaggerated silhouette. Or the Duratlantic show that had these sort of gender-swapped chest busts. Or the Demna Jean-Paul Gaultier show, which featured things like this or this, which everyone hated, by the way. I'm not saying it's a good execution, but it was there. I mean, I certainly wouldn't equate any of these things with drag, but there is a notable interest here in theatricality and exaggeration, specifically in regards to gender presentation and the body. I just thought this was an interesting pattern. If there happen to be any drag performers watching, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. One more specific element of theatrical and/or drag aesthetics that I thought might trend this year was makeup. I also feel like there are some big similarities between 1920s makeup and drag makeup. I could see this expressive, dramatic, vintage-inspired theatricality working its way into fashion more this year. This one, I don't know. I don't think this really happened. Honestly, I don't know why I make beauty predictions, because I don't follow makeup and beauty trends nearly as closely as I do fashion. So I don't really know what's going on well enough to comment. I mean, the natural look that I referenced earlier was definitely much more popular in the mainstream, which I sort of presumed it would be. Although I did find that searches for theater makeup and dramatic makeup were up this year, but drag makeup, 1920s makeup, and circus makeup we're not. So again, there's this sense of like being interested in the dramatic thing, but not necessarily naming it with those particular references. Another drag/1920s fashion parallel I predicted were hand fans. Hand fans are sometimes used in drag. They were also like a thing in the 1920s and throughout much of history. I could see foldable paper hand fans becoming more of like a mainstream fashion accessory. And I think I was right that these got more popular this year. I saw more of them in real life. Searches for paper fan, hand fan, foldable fan, and folding fan were all up in 2025. Finally, we just have a couple miscellaneous predictions I threw in at the end here. 1, pillbox hats. This was not a trend at all, it seems. Although, funnily enough, I think I just saw like a fashion industry person, it may have been Mandy Lee of Old Loser in Brooklyn, referred to 2025 as the year of the pillbox hat. So I don't know, I might have been onto something, but according to the search volume data, no, this was not a trend at all. And like, I did not see people wearing these. I don't know if this is still incoming or if this was just a fluke, but was not a trend. 2, aviator sunglasses, or specifically this aviator shape. These are like a tiny bit up in search volume, but they were higher in 2022. So that's not promising. What's interesting to me about this one is aviator glasses or aviator sunglasses are not trending up, but aviator eyeglasses and aviator frames, which implies not sunglasses, but actual glasses to see, are up. Also, I'm thinking of Renee Rapp here, of course. So I guess this glasses shape is having a bit of a moment perhaps, but I don't know, not the mainstream trend that I had imagined. This is all over the runway though, still. So this is another one I think is still coming. 3, anorak jackets. This one was also completely wrong. Anoraks are literally not up at all. I don't know if people are calling them something different now, but I don't think these are a trend by any name because I have not seen them. And finally, 4, we kind of already talked about this, but round bubble shapes have already been so popular, and I just think they're going to get even bigger. They're going to get more popular, and maybe 2025 will be the year of the round silhouette, the year of the bubble. Okay, we are ending on a high note here because I completely nailed this one. We have already talked about so many of the specific round or like poofy items that were trending this year, like you know, the round puffy blouse. Also, literally searches for round fashion were up this year. Searches for round pants, round skirt, round shorts, round coat, round sweater, literally any clothing item in a round shape, the stocks are up. Also, just looking at stores, runways, thinking of trends like those bloomer pants, barrel leg jeans, of course. I think I hit the nail on the head with this one. All right. Those were all the trends I predicted for 2025. Some of them were way off, but I think a lot of them were spot on. I think I did pretty well. I'm also intrigued to see how trends evolve next year. I'm already formulating my trend predictions for 2026, so stay tuned for that soon. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your input on how these trends may have manifested or not for you this year in your own observations. And I heard if you do leave a comment, watch another video, like maybe this one right here, and subscribe, all your most hopeful and idyllic fashion trend predictions for 2026 will come true.